am Cammie, the Hooked Hearty, and you all know now my lovely co-host, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hey,
all right, we are fulfilling our promise. At least we're starting it. We'll see how far we get. Today, we will be talking about season 2, episodes 1 and 2, Trials of the Heart. Okay, so from the very, very beginning, now I was binge watching this, so I watched it right after the first kiss, and I was so happy that I was doing it. But one thing that I noticed immediately is we've got Rachel, Pockets, Emily, and Ephraim, all kids that we knew from season 1. And immediately my first thought on watching this was, I love it. The consistency. These are all kids that we know. These are all kids that we are familiar with. And they are the ones running up to Elizabeth. It's not random children. So I really, and then later on, we see Wyatt and Bo and Gabe.
Yes.
And the three of them playing ball. And once again, I said, I love it. Consistency. Right? You know, it really helped tie the seasons together.
It was so great they were able to do that. And it's just kind of funny that that's like immediately what hits you, because later on you start to, see the black hole start to form in Hope Valley. And that's just the very beginning where like, at least it started out with that consistency and was able to kind of make that bridge between the two seasons. But obviously, inevitably, people can't return for TV shows and things happen. But that was
kids really get too old.
Yeah, especially with children. That's even harder, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah,
before we get super far into the actual episode, I have to tell anybody who's watching who hasn't seen our previous couple videos, I love season 2.
Oh dear, here it comes.
This is going to be the excitement, I think, of us reviewing these is I really do have a different view of season 2 than most people I talk to. So I want to help kind of be that devil's advocate, kind of talking about debating the different things that occurred in this season.
Let's put it on a banner. Sarah Niche, a different view of season 2.
Ooh, it rhymes nice. We could make a hashtag out of that. I just, and again, you know this, Cammie. When I first watched it, same thing. I had a lot of the same views. There are a lot of differences in season 2 versus season 1. There's a different feel to it with a lot of Hamilton scenes. When rewatching it, I have a very different opinion of it, and I've grown to really have a lot of respect for it and the characters.
Yeah, I tried that.
Yeah, I know you did.
Okay, now let me clarify. I see season 2 as necessary. I believe season 2 is 100% necessary, because Jack needed to see just how privileged Elizabeth's life was. He had to see where she was coming from. And that was something he needed to experience 100%. Elizabeth needed to be tested as far as her feelings for Jack. Were they true when she goes back to her old life? So I 100% believe that season 2 is necessary. I just don't like watching all of it.
Okay.
So,
and I'll take it a step further. I'll take it a step further when you say that about Elizabeth. So not only did she have to be tested with her feelings for Jack, but I think just in general, her whole feelings about herself, her confidence, her moving away from home, if that was the right decision.
Yeah.
So a lot more internal conflict for her that I don't think she knew she still had after season 1. I think she felt like she was really comfortable and confident in her new life in Coal Valley.
Yeah.
And I think that just brought up a lot of old feelings that she didn't realize she still had. And I think we'll go into that as certain aspects show themselves throughout the season. But I think it was much more internal than just her feelings for Jack.
Well, it's just like what her father said to Jack. I don't think she knows who she is yet. And that was
I think that was
a line.
I think that was very true.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. That was in this episode.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I think we didn't want to hear her dad say that. I think that made us kind of resent him a little bit to hear that, because we're like, yes, she does. She loves Jack. But also that made me not completely hate her father, because I was like, he's seeing something. He's seeing a struggle within her that she doesn't really even know is there yet.
Yeah. And okay, since we're on the subject of him, let's talk about Garwin Sanford. I know that you're a big fan of his. I'm a huge fan of his. Do you remember the first time you ever saw him? I
didn't realize it was him at the time. Years ago, I did, once when I was watching When Calls the Heart, I, really fell in love with his character and started kind of researching where I'd seen him before. And he was on a TV show in the mid 90s called Hawkeye with Lee Horsley, a very old kind of Native American war kind of story. And he played a character in that, a regular character. So he was one of the main characters that I remember from that show.
Okay.
So he's been in a million things if you look at his history. He's
got a ton of credits to his name. First time I saw him was in 1996, I believe. He was in a Hallmark, very, very early stages. Hallmark teamed up with Showtime, and they took famous stories and made modern versions of them. So they did Robin Hood, and they called it Robin of Locksley, and Locksley was a school for boys. They did Annie Oakley and Wild Bill Hickok. And that's where I saw Chad Willett for the first time. It was called Annie O, and instead of guns, they made it basketball, and everybody was booing letting a girl on the boys' basketball team, but there was no girls' team, so the coach let her on. So, but the one that I saw Garwin Sanford in, it was called Ronnie and Julie. You want to take a wild guess?
Well, I know because you've talked about this a million times to me before.
Now you stop. But it was a reimagining of Romeo and Juliet. It starred Margot Finley and Josh Jackson, who you might know from The Mighty Ducks. He was also in Friends as an adult. Ding, ding, ding. But it's a reimagining of Romeo and Juliet, and Garwin Sanford played the principal. So he was the prince type character. And I thought he was fantastic. And that was the one thing I saw him in. And this was the time period when I was living in Nicaragua. So it was kind of lonely. So let's just say that I knew that movie really, really well. So I knew his face really, really well. So when he shows up on When Calls the Heart, I went,
I recognize him.
It's the principal. It's Principal Lester. Okay, so let's begin, shall we? But yeah,
all right.
We're both fans of Garwin Sanford.
Yes, and I'm thrilled that he's been in the few episodes he's been in so far. I'm glad they were able to have him throughout the series so far, and hope we see him again.
Okay,
Um,
so
okay, so I mean, they start off with a bang, really. They bring in that banter that everyone
oh my gosh.
loves.
I really, especially since we know the direction season 2 is going, I really appreciated, once I had watched more of it, I really appreciated how light things started between the two of them.
Right.
So do we tell the story of the accident? The really fun take.
I think
All right.
so.
So
Sure.
this is not verbatim, but this is the story as Dan and Aaron tell it. When Jack is getting Elizabeth up onto the horse, you know, the yelp, how exactly do I get up? So what happened on one of the takes is she overcompensated by jumping, and he overcompensated by lifting and almost tossing her up there. And Aaron did a lovely little somersault right over the horse and landed on the ground on the other side. And Dan says that everybody just froze. Just, oh
Right?
no.
So many things could go wrong here.
So many things could go wrong here. And then she just stood up, brushed herself off, and said, well, let's try that again. And everybody just went, oh, okay.
How about the kiss banter?
Okay, so number one, it's almost like I wanted verification. Like, yes, kiss her again. Kiss her again. But the fact that they could talk about it without being too embarrassed, you know, Elizabeth had to get past it a little bit, but I really did like the fact that they could talk about it. But when Jack says, not too many, 5 maybe, and the look of horror and shock. Did I say 5? I meant 2. You and my mother.
Yeah. That's one of his best, like over the years, they have a few different just like back and forth banters. And that's one of the times that I just feel like he was the quickest on his feet and just trying to spit something back out to solve the problem.
Yes.
And I also, I mean, it was a little kind of funny because she just found out recently that he was engaged to this other woman. So
right.
She has to know he's kissed someone else.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that she was that shocked. I'm like, he was engaged. I mean, I know things were done differently back in 1910, but I still would have thought
probably a kiss with a proposal. I
would hope.
And he didn't make any comment about a lot of women. He just made a comment that he had kissed someone before. So it was a little funny that there wasn't a reference to Rosemary there.
And oh yeah, that was a very, very good move that he did not reference her specifically because things are still a little fresh. But this one scene is one place where me as an actor, I go back and I study this scene because of Dan's mannerisms. Dan has some of the most playful and just funny and detailed mannerisms of playing a character. And
I agree.
And they're small. They are so nuanced and small, but they add so much to the character. But for instance, when Elizabeth says, "You expect me to believe that?" And he's just, I mean, it added so much when he did so little. And it just shows that he does truly embody this character. And he's hiding an accent on top of that. You know?
Oh, I can't even get over that. He's so good at hiding his accent.
I still remember introducing my mom to the show and watching it with her, and she said, he is the most natural looking one on this show, and he's the one that's working the hardest. Because because he had to cover an accent. Now later on,
totally
he found out that Loretta Walsh was also covering an accent, but at the time, we didn't know that, and so we were like, yeah, he looks the most natural, and he's the one working the hardest. So
right. I think when you have to work that hard at something, you're either, amazing at it or you can't pull it off.
Right, exactly. But yeah, this is just one of those scenes where you can't help but smile. You just can't help but smile while you're watching. Yeah. All right, so moving on from the lighthearted fun stuff, we got Judge Parker, who has replaced Jedediah Black because the man got bitten by a rattlesnake in his hotel room.
That's strange. I wonder how that happened.
I wonder who orchestrated that. But one thing I have to say about the actor who played Judge Parker, I love how straight-faced he can be, because he's been the playful grandpa in several, but he can also be the very stern, straight-faced. But one thing I love about him is his first name is Surge. And so we're talking about Red Surge and Mounties. And so I just thought that was a fun coincidence.
That is really funny. Yeah, no, he played that part very well.
He did. He did.
Kind of that judge who you're not really sure if you can trust or not. There's enough evidence to where you're like, I don't know that I trust you, but there's enough. He's got enough of a moral compass that you've got a shot.
Yeah, a shot in the dark, big time, because he's playing poker with the defense. He's having a drink in his room with the defense. I mean, and Sam Madison, who is a woman, a female lawyer, she comes in with guns blazing. Bless her heart. Good for her.
That got me. So I had to look it up as soon as that scene, I looked that up. The first woman to graduate from law school in the US was in 1870. So by this point in time, it was not unheard of.
Oh yes, I
was definitely like, oh my gosh, were they, pushing the envelope here with the timeline? But there had been women graduating law school for 40 years. So
still new, but not
still new, but not like to have them be as floored as they all were. It helped me to
Cold Valley. It's Cold Valley.
It helped me to normalize it a little bit. Go, okay, this has been happening. But it still threw everybody off enough that I think that they underestimated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved the character of Samantha Madison, and how, she says, despite the fact that I'm wearing a skirt, this case is in capable hands. Like, I agree wholeheartedly. She really went on the attack, and she held nothing back on anything. She went the extra mile in every sense of the word. So here's another nuance or mannerism, if you will. When Jack comes in to see how the conversation with Sam Madison went, I love how he just walks in the back door. He doesn't knock. He just kind of knocks and walks in, takes off his hat, and then he goes and he helps himself to a cup of coffee. He knows he can do that. It shows how comfortable they are in this setting, which it's one of those little things that I pick up on, and I love, because it establishes history, and it establishes a huge comfort level.
Yes. 100%.
But in that conversation, I realized something that I had never heard before, that this Judge Parker is the nephew of Isaac Parker, the hanging judge. And then Abigail says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So apparently this judge is ruthless, and we don't know what kind of a moral compass he has, which is the scary part.
Right.
And then we have the struggle of Abigail taking dessert at Jack's suggestion to the saloon, to the judge, and he's playing cards with Garwin and the lawyer, Gentry. That's the best way I can think to say it. And then Jack holding Elizabeth back when she starts forward, like, nope,
That's not gonna go well.
That is not gonna go well. All right, so let's talk about the struggle that Abigail is having, because there's a lot of stress on Abigail right now. She's got the trial coming up. They lost Jedediah Black, which they thought was a good thing, but not anymore. And then she found out that Bill is married with a child. So Abigail is going through a lot of stress right now. And that kind of thing is impossible to handle when it comes crashing down on you all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was really glad that they let it out in the beginning. You know, when Bill says, "What's wrong?"
Yeah,
There's
no,
something
that was
you're not
really
telling me.
Yeah, exactly. And to have that like really upfront conversation between the two of them and have him really kind of push and just be like, he very much set this up as like, if we're not going forward, that's okay, but we need to clear the air here. This is not, this isn't healthy. We're still working together. We're still working on this case. The trial's not over. And so I'm glad that they worked through that quickly so that wasn't this major thing up in the air. Obviously we'll come back to that storyline later.
Yes.
For some more drama in future episodes, but
they needed to be on the same side
for especially for right now, moving forward and the way the trial was progressing.
But the one problem with them getting through that so quickly is now Elizabeth and Rosemary are working together at the cafe. Oh dear. Okay, this is when I said, this is true love right here. He really does love her.
Eat the steak, man. You gotta.
I wrote down what she said. I did just spend an hour over a hot stove, and we both know that if you don't eat this, no one else will. And just giving him, I mean, she is one step shy of batting her eyelashes at him.
Or breaking into tears. You couldn't really tell which way she was going to go.
It's a thin line.
And I've been there. I don't want to admit that, but yeah, early on in my relationship with my husband, I think I've come a ways, but I know I made some dinners that were not enjoyable to eat.
Did Steve make a Jack choice or no?
For the most part, he's always eaten at least one serving of something.
Oh, good for him. Good on you, man. So yeah,
there may have been one time where I didn't even serve it, though. There may have been one time that I just, this is going in the trash. Yeah.
So Jack makes the very, very tough decision of skipping getting the forensic specialist in there to investigate the chicken fried steak, and he eats it. And I just went, oh man, he loves her so much. And to do it right in front of Rosemary, I mean, that
was the kicker, right? I think he knew that you can't say no in front of Rosemary. He knows Rosemary. He knows what she's capable of. Mm-hmm. He knows that she will give Elizabeth a hard time about this. And so he made a very good decision.
Yes, he did. So Elizabeth gets a very sad telegram saying that she has to go to Hamilton because her mother is extremely ill. And when Jack came into the room and she was packing and he says, "I'm going with you," I remember watching it for the first time and just going, ah. I was so glad. Number one, she needed him. That was my very firm belief, that she should not take this journey alone, because she is very emotionally distraught right now. And he is one of the best support systems there is, let's be honest. And then the other reason was, I even said this out loud. I said, yeah, he needs to be away with Rosemary staying. He needs to go away.
Little distance would be nice.
Little distance is a good thing. So we get to Hamilton, and, it's the banter keeps going, which, I'm glad that they didn't leave the banter on the train. And, did the essentials include an anvil? I'm happy to carry my own bags. Okay. And that, okay, you've made your point. So, but when they come across Regina Allen, and then she leaves to catch her train to go meet the Austrian Count, and friend of yours?
With the moat.
Might be stretching it. Good, because she judges a man by the size of his moat. Just, once again, his delivery of lines is just, it's funny. He knows how to do it. He has great comic timing.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that was really brilliant. I also, what I noticed with kind of the mannerisms in the next scene, so then when they get to her house, is I could visibly see Elizabeth like tense and change when her father appeared. There was not, it wasn't with her sister. She was still very casual. She started speaking.
When Viola shows up,
she started speaking a little bit more formally with Viola. But her whole body changed when her father entered the screen. And I think that's just so interesting. I think that's one of the character things that really fascinates me about this season, is kind of that coming of age idea of when people move away from home at a very young age and kind of do a lot of their growing separate from their families, then when they get back together, there's typically a lot of regression, and it's usually very subconscious, and they don't realize they're doing it. And I've kind of just noted this in my personal life at times with different people, but in several TV shows as well. And I think this just beautifully kind of encapsulates that, because she really has done so much growth on her own.
Yeah.
And you just naturally tend to act like you always have with any person, with anybody that you have a long history with. You tend to kind of fall into roles that you've had, and whether that be, that she's, not the, that she's one of their children and they're her parents, and so they have expectations for her, or whether it's, the society piece of the type of family that they're from. I don't know, but there's all these different factors playing into this, and I don't think she realizes it at this point of the show. In this episode, she doesn't realize she's changing, and she's acting a little different around them. But you as the viewer can see it very clearly.
Yeah. And you can also see Jack's realization of what he's dealing with, and you see him begin to internally panic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when they're in the car and he's just looking up and yeah, it's not quite that obvious, because like we've said, he's a very good, nuanced actor with his facial expressions, but you can tell he's panicking and he's trying very hard to keep it down. When Julie shows up, you know, he's got a little bit of relief. He knows Julie. He knows what she likes. It's good to see you, Julie. And then Viola shows up and he kind of straightens a little bit more and is a lot more formal. And then Daddy shows up and he's like, it's all business. They don't mention anything personal in front of Dad except for inviting him for dinner, which Dad tries to talk her out of doing. And luckily, thankfully, she doesn't budge on it. She doesn't regress that far.
Right.
Okay, really quick, let's talk about 2 first appearances that we see. We see a young lady in Hamilton regarding a newspaper story about the trial with a lot of sadness. She's a very lovely young lady with dark curly hair, and it's obvious she knows something. And then back in Coal Valley, we see a mystery man on a contraption called a motorcycle, making his first entry on the scene with boys.
I think what is exciting for me is that they took this direction of having all this Hamilton stuff happening this season. And then simultaneously, while bringing in new sets, new characters, like a completely different direction for the show, for the season almost. And then they also simultaneously are filming in Coal Valley. They're bringing in new characters there. They're dealing with the old storyline that has this huge impact on the town. And they're doing like so many different, very different things all at the same time. And I think that they did them all quite successfully, if you think about it. And to have this entrance of, you know, nobody knew this was going to be one of the most iconic characters of the series.
And most beloved.
Right? Like this show would not be this show without Cabin, without the character of Lee, played by Cabin. Like this show would be completely different without the character or somebody else in this role. This really makes, he has such great comedic timing and he's got that mysterious, especially in this episode, right? He comes in, you don't know anything about him. He's got a motorcycle. He's asking a lot of questions. Well, he's not really asking a lot of questions, but he's clearly finding out a lot. Yeah. He's looking for specific information and you don't know why. It adds a lot of mystery and intrigue.
Yeah, big time. Really quickly, for anybody who doesn't know, I want to interject the story of the motorcycle. So, number one, Pascal Hutton was pregnant during this season. You can't tell. You can't tell. You can tell if you go back and look at it after watching a different season. But in just watching season 2, you can't tell at all. She looks fantastic.
She does. And they did a really good job hiding it.
Yeah, they did a very good job hiding it. And so they were asking Kevin if he could ride a motorcycle, because as we have been told many times, actors lie. Actors lie in auditions. Can you ride a horse? Of course I can ride a horse. Can you roller skate? Of course I can. Can you fly a plane? Absolutely. So they asked Kevin, can you ride a motorcycle? Yes, I can. They didn't quite believe him, but he said, I have a motorcycle's license. Yes, I can. And they're just kind of putting him through the ringer. And then he sees the thing and what he describes as a bicycle with a sewing basket engine. He said, are you kidding me? Yes, I can drive that. And then
he only has to drive it like a couple feet anyway. So.
I know. And Pascal Hutton, when Rosemary jumps on the motorcycle later on in these episodes, they didn't want to take any chances, and so they pulled it off camera with a rope because they didn't want anything to happen to her. You can't drive too fast, she's pregnant. So they pulled it off with a rope. So that's your bit of trivia for the motorcycle, if you didn't know that. It's just funny. All right, let's go back to Hamilton for a little bit. Jack and Elizabeth are out for lunch. I wrote down right here in my notes, enjoy it. It's one of the last flirty and playful scenes in this season.
Say it's the last, but there's a big break without.
I said one of the last, because yes, there are romantic scenes left, but this is one of the last flirty, playful, banterish type moments between the two of them. And once again, talking about being comfortable with the kissing. Oh, I wanted him to kiss her again so badly, but Hamilton, big city, lots of people around. That's not the way Jack operates. He's fine talking about it. Nobody's paying attention, but people will immediately start paying attention if Elizabeth Thatcher is kissing somebody on the sidewalk. So
yes, and she was very much not ready for that.
No, but she did respond. She did respond by kissing him on the cheek and saying, "Consider it a down payment." That's for another writing lesson, which I thought was great. I thought that was a fantastic way. All right, so then we begin with the trial. The trial ends the episode, and we go on to the second half of this story, Trial of the Heart Part 2. So we start the trial in episode 1, we leave it at a huge cliffhanger, and then we go on with the trial in episode 2. So I think that the biggest thing that happens right here is Joseph Sweeney. What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, he's a great actor. I feel so weird watching it. When I rewatched it, I was just like, I could pick up on all the little nuances of that I honestly didn't the first time I saw it. I was just like,
he was gonna backtrack.
Yeah, you could just really read it. You could see that Bill was kind of picking up on his apprehension. With we can't pay you. Yeah, and so I mean that was just like, it was very different on the rewatch for me, to kind of see some nuances that they were doing in that scene. But it was really interesting how you could pick up on all these things. It was kind of one of those like trademark, if you watch like law movies or things with trials in them, like this is what's going to happen, and seeing it in this setting in this little frontier town, and still seeing that they're going to get to him, and they're going to bribe him, and they're going to get him to change his story. And it was very interesting to kind of see it from this kind of perspective in this little small town. But I thought it just went through these motions really nicely, of just the kind of the classic law drama.
And it became a case of the mining company versus Noah Stanton, instead of the mining company versus the town of Coal Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when Gentry gets up and says, "Let me just say, it's a great honor to stand before you today," I went, oh dear. Hold on to your hats, because this is going to be a bumpy ride if he's already talking sweet like that. So we get the basic gist that there is a document. There are 2 copies of this document. One says that the ventilation system is not safe and that Noah Stanton tried to report it. There's another document that says that the ventilation system was completely safe and Noah Stanton failed to activate it. So is it his fault or is it not his fault that the tragedy happened? That's what this becomes. And Joseph Sweeney had a document saying that he had inspected the system. It was unsafe. He swore that he would testify to that in court. And then he backs down and Sam goes after him with a vengeance. Don't you dare get on that stagecoach. Who got to you? Gowan, Gentry, what did they promise you? And this is what said it all. More than chicken pot pie. And I just went, oh, you dirty, bad, nasty.
Oh my goodness. I personally love chicken pot pie. So
I love chicken pot pie too. It's one of my favorite meals.
It might have gone differently if this was me. But what are you going to do? Some people prefer money.
Well, and that one thing about this that we don't get to see is we don't get to see Sam Madison accuse him in court of perjury. And I mean, obviously that's going way out on a limb and that would take too much away from the Coal Valley story, but I almost would have liked to see that play out because, she yells at him as the stagecoach is driving away. I'll have you arrested for perjury. And I wanted to see her nail him, but we get to see her nail a lot of other people. So
yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm kind of holding out hope that like sometime in the future, we're still going to see some of these people pop back up again. Every once in a while you get that. I mean, I feel like,
after
possibly,
so many years,
possibly, or his name might get mentioned in something,
it's possible.
It definitely, with the way a few things went down in season 8, I'm definitely seeing that, they're making an effort to kind of tie things back to things that have happened before and just have those loops closed and have things really make sense in the Hearties verse, in this universe. They're really trying to make connections. And Matthew Harrison, who played Sweeney, he's an established Hallmark actor who very well could make an appearance or could be referenced in some way. That'd be kind of fun to just like have some sort of callback to the trial.
Yeah. Okay, so before we go to the end of the episode with the trial cliffhanger, let's just talk about 2 more things. Number 1, the entrance of the childhood friend. And right when Julie and Elizabeth, I have no idea. And right when Elizabeth and Julie are talking about Jack too. I mean,
I know, right?
That's
timing.
I don't know if that's tragic or just embarrassing. So, I mean, when we're together, it's like everything in the whole world fades away. And it's just the 2 of us. And Julie, in her melodramatic way, is it love? It could be. Has he said it? No. Have you? Of course not. Oh, how wonderful it must be to be in love. Charles? What? It was just such a shock to the system. Like, here we are.
Nobody saw it coming.
What?
Nobody saw it coming.
No.
It was very much out of the blue. We'd had some scenes in Hamilton already. Nobody's mentioned this character. Nothing has been alluded to of this history there. And so, I mean, surprise.
And then, why don't you take Charles out to the gardens? I'm like, can we be any more obvious, Mom?
And I think that's funny. I just watched a Hallmark Christmas movie with that actress who plays her mom, and she was in the exact same role of trying to set her child up. I was sitting there watching her going, this is like exactly how she acted.
She's really good at this.
She's got experience with this plot line and she's doing a good job.
We'll get more into him later. So then we go into another outside location, but more natural, shall we say. And we hear someone who is not very at home in nature say, "It's beautiful out here, isn't it?" And the very, very charming and flirtatious reply of, "Well, the view just got a whole lot better." I mean, can we talk about boom, boom, boom?
Yeah.
Rosemary and Lee, right from the start. And this is where you see their very, very prevalent way of playing off of each other. Miss Laveau, did you follow me? I like to think of it as fate. Well, I believe in making my own fate. Somehow I could tell that about you, but I thought I was the man of mystery. But I like solving mysteries. And just never a beat, but it comes off so naturally.
It really does. There's just nothing like the chemistry between Pascal and Kevin. There isn't. They play off each other like they've known each other for years.
And at this point, they did not.
At this point, they didn't.
Yeah. All right. And then we come to the huge ending of the first episode, when that same lovely young lady that we saw eyeing the newspaper in Hamilton walks in. Sam Madison goes and hugs her. What the what? Huh? And the judge says, "Do you want to tell us who you are?" And she says, "Clara Stanton, Peter Stanton's widow." And the whole
mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop, credits up. That is one of those moments that if I had been watching live, probably about 10 minutes of Golden Girls would have come on and played before I had realized that I had been Golden Girled. I would have been sitting in such shock that, oh, there's another show. I should probably turn off the TV.
Right. Yeah. That was such a great, just like cliffhanger shocker. I will say, so like this, when this aired originally on TV, because I was not binge watching season 2, I was watching this live.
Right.
They were aired together on the same night. So you wouldn't have been Golden Girled as a brand new episode.
Oh, okay. Because they were showing it on the same night.
They showed 2 episodes back to back that night. That's why these are considered part 1 and part 2. They did. Season 2 was an odd year that they aired a few different weeks were aired as 2-part movies. So there's a plus there. You wouldn't have had a major cliffhanger. But yes, introduction of Clara, who is a character nobody saw coming. I think because I don't remember, did we know exactly how old Peter was? I feel like he was like 16,
18.
17. He was 18. Okay.
18, yeah, because it's a passing moment. But Abigail says to Bill that she met Noah when she was 18, just about the age Peter would be, and if he were alive now. And it
had been several months, so it's
but not
he
years.
Was 7. So it's possible he was 17 when he died,
or he was well into 18. We don't know, but he was around 18. Right. When he died, and so he probably got married at 18. She could have been 17.
Yeah, but yeah, it was just one of those things where I think because we didn't know exactly how old he was, and because obviously Abigail had not acted like she thought there was anybody in his life, it never crossed my mind that he would have even been able to have been married. And you know, I think probably you could get married a little younger back then, but it just didn't cross your mind when you're watching the show.
No.
Based on all of those different facts coming together. So it was a really great way to kind of have a surprise plot twist.
Yeah, they do that a lot in these 2 episodes, don't they?
There was
boom, 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 with a lot of surprise entrances. All right, and we find out that Sam found her through a public record search. That ain't like going on Google, you know?
I know. Because at first you're like, well, how did nobody else figure that out? It's like, well, back then that was probably a huge ordeal to do a public record search.
For her to find a wedding certificate among all of the minors that died. How many were there? 47? So she was going through the public records of 47 dead men, you know, and just, that was not easy to do in 1910.
No.
Not at all. Oh, so I had forgotten Clara's maiden name, Weller, Clara Weller. So that I said, oh, that's it. And she has the original document signed by Joseph Sweeney that he wrote down, and it's in black and white, that the ventilation system is unsafe because Noah Stanton gave it to Peter, and then Peter gave it to Clara because both of them were worried that something was going to happen. And it turns out that it was a very good thing that they did what they did in giving it to her, because she literally saved the trial. Despite Gowan and Gentry's attempts to bribe the judge, which I don't know about you. What did you think? Did you think, watching it for the first time, that he was going to cave? Because I totally thought he was going to cave.
I thought that was very likely. And I thought we were going to have to kind of come at it in another way, maybe in another episode. I didn't know it was going to actually get resolved that quickly. I thought this might be a bigger, overarching, longer season. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think probably my favorite moment is when Abigail goes up to her, Clara, I'm Abigail Stanton, Peter's mother, and just an immediate breakdown. Oh, and the immediate hug. I almost started crying myself then. Imagine the pressure that this young woman is under, and she doesn't know anybody in this town. And not only does a friendly face come up to her, it's her mother-in-law. And she was worried. She knew she would run across her if she came, and she didn't know how she was going to take that. So then we go back to Charles and Elizabeth in the garden. I mean, I don't have any opinion on that.
Not at all.
Actually, I'll get deeper into this as the season goes on. But I mean, obviously we want Elizabeth to be with Jack, but you have to give the man some credit. He's not a bad person.
Thank you.
He's not.
Have that perspective of what he's experiencing. This is his friend. He's known his whole life. Who he
has been in love with. He's been in love with.
He's had feelings for her. And there's probably been a lot of talk from their families, kind of pressuring them in that direction over the years. And here she's back. You're getting to spend time with her. You're so excited to see her. She seems really happy, and she does seem probably, you know, very much like she did before. We acknowledged, you know, she's acting a little bit different than she has in Coal Valley. So she probably doesn't seem like she's different to him. She doesn't seem like she's grown into this other person. You know, we're sitting there looking at her going, you're acting a little weird. but to him, this is
but
normal.
to him,
he is. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, being more of a high society kind of person in that atmosphere. That's just who we know she isn't anymore. We know she's grown. We know she's had these other experiences and that she belongs in this other place. But to her family and to Charles, they don't know this. They don't know this. And at the beginning of this conversation, he doesn't know Jack exists yet. So
right. Well, and right there, I thought, for a man who has been in love with her for a very long time, I thought he took this very, very well when he says, is there anything else keeping you there? And she gets a little bashful and says, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't. And he just grits his teeth and says, he must be very special to be worthy of your affection. I must confess, I'm disappointed. So he made it known. He didn't lie.
He did.
Made it known. She kind of brushed it off, but he also acknowledges, okay, round one goes to you, mystery man.
Right. And I think what's interesting there is that he kind of lets it go. I feel like a little bit right then, but he also doesn't know who Jack is.
Yeah,
he just knows there's that guy. So I think that's where he starts getting a little bit more, you know, he starts deciding later in the episode that he might push a little bit more when he finds out who Jack is, because again, he doesn't see how that could work. He doesn't see how somebody who's a Mountie, who's in this other type of position and has a dangerous life, really fits in with the Elizabeth that he knows.
Right.
And so I think that it all makes really good sense from a character standpoint, that you have this guy who's lived the type of life that Charles has lived and knows the Elizabeth he thinks he knows. It makes sense that you might be like, this doesn't add up, and I'm gonna push a little. I'm gonna fight for what I think is the right thing.
Yeah, you got to cut the guy a little slack.
It's a tough position to be in, no matter who you are.
It is. All of these positions are tough. Speaking of tough positions, who do we meet? We meet the black sheep of the family. Who
might be my favorite character.
Of course he is. Oh, we meet Tom Thornton, Jack's little brother. They have a very interesting relationship. You can tell that Jack adores him. You can tell that Jack has missed him so much, but you can also tell that he is incredibly frustrated by him. Tom, you can tell that he adores his older brother. You can tell that he is disappointed that he has not visited more, you know, and he jibes him. I almost didn't recognize you without your band uniform. I'm like, oh, cut it out, you know.
Such a brother comment, isn't it?
It's such a brother comment. And we both have brothers, so we know. So yeah, but he is desperate to break free. He is desperate to break free of a mold. He's desperate to, you know, pronounce himself as Tom Thornton, and he's kind of got this rebellious streak going, and the Mounties told Jack that they have to keep an eye on him because he's been getting into some trouble. And then a bar fight happens over $10 that Jack tries to pay, but Tom then throws a blow and all heck breaks loose.
Right. Oh, the dynamic of younger siblings, right?
Hey, watch it. I'm a youngest sibling.
There's a dynamic.
There's definitely a dynamic.
there can be, and it plays into what's happened, right? In this situation, you've got a very successful older sibling.
Yeah.
And the younger sibling hasn't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard. And then you add in the fact that your older sibling is successful following the path of your father, which just adds in that complexity of like Tom feeling like he's such a screw up, you know, and wanting to be seen as capable and strong, and nobody will see him that way because they are comparing him constantly to his older brother.
Well, and then we get even more complicated with other older siblings when Jack and Tom just happen to be thrown right at the feet of the three Thatcher sisters.
Which would be uncomfortable without the personal dynamic between them all. It's like, here you've fallen at the feet of this royalty family from the city. That would be uncomfortable anyway.
And then let's add on to all of that, and Viola's just utter disgust at the whole situation. And you see Jack desperately trying to convey messages with his eyes. He's locking eyes with Elizabeth, saying,
Tom,
please understand what I'm trying to tell you without telling you, because I can't right now. He was trying I felt for Jack I feel for Jack in a lot of scenes, but I felt for Jack
that was very unfortunate timing.
So badly in that scene. He is trying so desperately to tell her with silent messages. He's trying to convey, this is not what you think. This is not what happened. It's just bad. It's just bad. Oh.
Well, and then you have the conflicting responses of Viola and Julie, because Julie's just tickled. She thinks this is hilarious.
Where have you been hiding your handsome brother?
You know, to her, this is just adds intrigue to the whole situation. Whereas to Viola, this is just like, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart.
These are the type of people you want to invite into our family? He said it was a misunderstanding. Ugh. So was the War of 1812. You're just like, well, hoity-toity. Oh my goodness. And the problem is, if we were just dealing with Tom, she would be 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that. The frustrating thing is that Jack is getting dragged into all of this with him, which is what we know is not right. And that's just the
that is very frustrating.
So, outcome of the trial. What was going through your head when
I was surprised that it was over. I was
Me too.
Like, wait, like it's over? We don't have to cover this anymore. It was a little surprising after having that be the entire point of the whole first season, and then now these two episodes. It was really exciting. I think it gave you that understanding that like now we get to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, it's a really, really, really happy time. And then of course Florence, who has a rain cloud for every silver lining, announces she doesn't know why everyone's so happy because the town is now going to become a ghost town. Enter Leland.
And now we know why he's here.
Enter Leland Coulter. And what does he do? He saves the town. He saves the town. He saves the day. The town is not going to become a ghost town because of him. I remember when we were interviewing Kevin, I said that. I said, you were the guy who saved Coal Valley. He said, I never really thought about it that way. Oh, well, then take it from us. And then put the cherry on top of the whipped cream, on top of the ice cream, on top of the cake. the judge gives the bribery money, the poker winnings, to Abigail, tells her to distribute all of that money between the widows. Between 47 widows, that's not going to be a lot. We don't know how much money was in that bag, but for back then, any extra amount was going to be a lot. So there wasn't going to be that much for each widow after you split it 47 times. But the fact that it's there is going to be a huge help. But then he says, if you tell anybody, I'll call you a liar. And it's just,
yeah.
I thought that was a great moment between the two of them, because now they have that trust. They have that secret between the two of them.
Right.
Okay. The entrance. This is the third time maybe that we get the full spectrum of how well Daniel Lissing acts with his eyes. The first time is in season 1 when she drops the shoe and the hair comb and all of the children laugh and are engaged, and you see that it goes in really tight on his face, and it's just this close-up of his eyes sparkling, and then she looks up at him and it's all back to business. And so it happens another time or two, but if Charles hadn't been there, it would have been the perfect magical moment. Dang it. But first you get Jack in a suit, and then you get Jack giving the mother flowers. We find out her name is Grace. So sweet. I thought for sure they were for Elizabeth. And then he says, these are for you. I'm like, oh, he brought mom flowers. And then he got
unfortunately.
I know, then he got shown up. Charles. And then here comes Elizabeth down the stairs looking like a queen. And just the look in his eye is magical. And I think the best part about this is with the way that she's been acting, kind of distant, not quite, but leaning that way. She could have just taken Charles's compliment and run with it, but instead, Charles says his compliment. She almost brushes it off when Jack says, I couldn't have said it better myself. And immediately she zeroes in on him. And I remember watching for the first time and going, oh, good job, girl. Good job. Good, right? That was the right move.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, his sister, oh gosh, is she determined to ruin everything for everybody? I mean, honestly, when she says, or getting thrown out of drinking establishments, like, you're going to embarrass him in a guest. Yes, he's lesser in status, but he's a guest in the home, and you are going to embarrass him in front of everybody at the entire table? I mean, if that's not classless, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I will say, of all the characters that people kind of have issues with in season 2, I will defend Viola the least.
Thank you.
She definitely seems to do a few things out of spite. She definitely,
a few things?
Well, yeah.
Do you have any defense for Viola in this moment? Any?
I think she is extremely. I think she is of the opinion that no. I think that she is of the opinion that this family really is not a good fit for socializing with them.
When Elizabeth says, I even miss Viola, even her own aunt says, Viola, let's not go overboard. I mean, even her own aunt says that. So
Agreed.
let's talk about that. So this is where Elizabeth begins to go into what I call princess mode. Everyone refers to her as Princess Elizabeth because they're practically royalty of Hamilton, and it's not full blown. It's not full blown, but this is where she starts to kind of enter princess mode. And that makes
you're having this party that is a situation that is triggering how you always used to act at these parties.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is a prime example of what I was talking about earlier, where you regress and you go, man, what was I like the last? I haven't been at one of these parties for years, but the last time I was what, 16, 17, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I acted like a spoiled 16-year-old. And she hasn't grown out of that with her family. So she regresses right back to that point. And I agree, spoiled princess. But I see why she did.
It really upset me because I think the starting point, she's trying to defend him and fails miserably.
Yes.
With certainly not on the job, referring to the drinking, I'm just like, sweetie, just stop talking. You're not helping at all.
Not a drink.
Oh gosh, that's season 1, first episode. She's gonna fail there, but she's reverting to that kind of flustered behavior. Yeah. So yeah, Elizabeth tries and fails to defend him, but then when Aunt Agatha refers to Jack as your Mountie, it almost upset me when she said, he isn't my Mountie, Aunt Agatha. And I'm just like, sweetheart, we need to have a conversation. I mean, we're talking about 1910, where a kiss meant something. They were not passed around casually. She was so appalled that he had kissed 5 women in total, and he had been engaged once before. But I couldn't tell if she was just trying to save face, or
I think it was the situation.
Was she trying to save face? Was she trying to convince herself?
I think it was just the situation.
I don't know what she was doing, but that one line, it kind of shows the direction that she's heading. And that's where I think the princess mode begins. Like, oh, no, you didn't. You did not just throw him under the bus like that. I mean, you guys are all but announced,
Yeah, I think it was the self-conscious. My parents are here. I know that they're going to have some feelings about this.
Yeah.
This is not the time or place to start calling him my Mountie.
No,
I think it's made her very uncomfortable.
It's not, but for her to blatantly say, instead of it's too early for that, she just blatantly says, he's not my Mountie, Aunt Agatha. I was like, ouch, ouch.
I mean, yes and no, because you also have just that ownership. Like, that sounds so possessive when you say it that way. It could just be that she very much disliked that kind of label.
I still don't like it.
But I loved that then Aunt Agatha, isn't he though?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So when they're doing the after dinner ritual of gathering in the parlor, why is she at the piano with Charles and leaving Jack to stand there all by himself? I mean, a woman who has been brought up as a hostess, he is her guest. I was like, why on earth? The only thing I can think of is maybe she thought she was performing for him, but she's also sitting next to Charles at this piano.
I I think at this point in time, she truly has regressed so much that she isn't even thinking about it.
Yeah, she's not even considering that a factor.
Teenage Elizabeth mode, where she's just chilling with her friend and they're just doing what they've always done. And I don't think it's even crossing her mind what that looks like on the outside, or the fact that Charles has been very honest that he has feelings for her. Right. I don't think any of that is playing into her thought process right now. She's just enjoying being home with her family and doing things she hasn't done in a long time.
Yeah. When Mr. Thatcher goes up to Jack and hands him whatever it is, brandy, whiskey.
Which was hilarious after they made this whole thing about if he drinks or not. Here.
After that huge conversation, I just was like, does Jack dare take it?
But I thought that was a great example of Dad kind of offering an olive branch. Like, he's not saying, yes, I want you to date my dog.
I think it was almost him trying to trap him.
I really don't. I didn't get that feeling. There were two things about that dinner party. There was the Charles and Jack discussion at the beginning, which we didn't cover. And I just want to say,
go ahead.
Both had some fabulous one-liners to each other in that conversation.
And they were friendly. They
were very respectful. This is when Charles is finding out who this other guy is that she has feelings.
This guy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that kind of conversation about, what a great assignment to be accompanying her back home. Oh, that wasn't an assignment, and quite honestly, Charles' line about sometimes I feel like I'm the son that Mr. Thatcher never had. Good for him, I mean, he's feeling like this guy's sneaking in on my girl, and I feel like I'm part of the family, and I'm establishing that I've been around a long time. That was really, it was a nice. He was still polite. He was still civil, like unlike Viola.
He was poking a pin in him,
But if we didn't love Jack, we would, if this was the Charles show, we would be like, yeah, I mean, it was a good
line. For Charles.
It was a good line. We aren't fighting for Charles, but it was a nice way to kind of, and I thought as a viewer, it really established that like, this is going to be a little bit of a rivalry going forward. Yeah. This is not a one episode thing. That's a slight, roadblock. This is going to be a
big deal.
But then the conversation between Jack and William, I really do think that he was trying to offer an olive branch in the sense of clearly, I think he respects him. I have always thought that he respects Jack. He knows he's a good person. He knows he's a noble person. He's been able to, he's always established that, I think, in all of his conversations. He just does not approve of them as a match. Mm-hmm. And I think that is him trying to say, hey, no hard feelings. This isn't personal. And as a parent, I think I think this is an inappropriate view because he's just basing it on, their status and what job he has. So I think that's completely inappropriate. But every parent is going to have views like that about who their child dates. And they're going to have sometimes a feeling about, I just don't think this is the right match. I don't think this isn't what I imagine for my child. This isn't what I think they want out of life. And I do believe that William entered this conversation in an attempt to explain himself respectfully to Jack, offer him a drink. Sorry, we had all this joking about drinking. I know you're an adult. I know you're okay. I mean, he explains to him the bond that he sees between Elizabeth and Charles. He's giving him history information about why they are so good together. So he's not even coming down on Jack as much as he is like, look at what I see. I'm seeing this.
Yeah, but I also see it from the point of view of a Jack lover. He's thrusting it in Jack's face, saying, you don't belong here. Not even giving him a chance. And once again, it's because of status.
Oh, I agree. He's not giving him a chance. I agree with that. He's not trying to give him any sort of chance at this stage of the show. But
right.
But I don't think that he's shoving it in his face. I think he's trying to prove his point
by shoving it in his face,
so that he will back off and let Elizabeth. Like, I think he can clearly see that Jack cares for her. Yeah. And I think he respects that, because the comments that he's making are more in line of doing what's right for her, which he thinks is letting go of her.
Yeah. Okay, so really quick to wrap up, when Jack announces that he's leaving Hamilton in the morning, of course I did not like that he was leaving, and I didn't like that he was leaving like this, but I think that's what Elizabeth needed to kind of trigger something. Yeah. She's all of a sudden so shocked, and I just wanted to say, can you blame the guy? But when he announces he's leaving in the morning, and she's trying to keep her cool, but he says, no, I have to get back. And then Miss Thatcher, I wrote down right here, cold as ice. I just felt a shiver when he said that, because that is a final statement if ever I saw one. And then very quickly, we have the whole thing of changing Coal Valley to
Hope Valley.
Hope Valley. We now can refer to it as Hope Valley. And I love what Mayor Ramsey says. Mr. Coulter is making us timber people, so Coal Valley no longer seems appropriate, and we have a bright future, so we're going to name it Hope Valley.
This was the first mention of the hopeful future theater in Hope Valley. This is the first time Rosemary basically tells Lee he needs to build her a theater.
Why let my talent go to waste? That's how she puts it.
And it is the first of many mentions of said theater.
Many.
So,
do you think Hope Valley is ever going to get said theater?
It has to, right? Like, the final episode, like years and years in the future, like it just has to be like the grand opening of the theater finally. Like, it just has to happen someday. Even if it's not even Rosemary acting in it. Like, it's been so long coming.
That would be a really, really interesting way to go about it, wouldn't it? In Rosemary's honor, carrying on her legacy.
I think it should happen someday.
Someday. All right, let's go to the train station. Tom goes to see Jack off. Jack wants him to come back to Coal Valley because he doesn't know about the name change yet. And Tom will not go. And then later on, Elizabeth, at the insistence of Aunt Agatha, thank you, Aunt Agatha, somebody in that household
love her.
In that household has their head on straight.
She really is such a fun character. It would be really fun to revisit her, or even have Elizabeth even if we don't see her again, even if they can't cast that, like even getting letters from her or something, that would just
having some kind of revisit from Aunt Agatha. Can you imagine her holding little Jack on her lap? I mean, and coming to visit Hope Valley, where there are so little creature comforts, as Elizabeth said. Anyway,
could be really fun.
Yeah. Elizabeth catches up with Jack before he gets on the train. He's so happy to see her. He just has that beautiful smile on his face. He's so happy that she came to say goodbye. But on the other hand, there's still that tension. And this is hardly the place for a kiss and make up.
Well, and there's no time. He's already being called to the train. No. It's the final call. There really isn't the ability to work through anything right now. And
now, one thing I do have to give Elizabeth credit for, because like I said, she's entering princess mode, which I'm not crazy about. But he says it really wasn't necessary. And she interrupts him and says, yes, it was.
Yes, it was. And that's good.
That is very good. I don't know what went wrong between us last night, but I don't want us to part like that. I went, thank you.
I felt like his reaction with his mannerisms when she was talking, like when she says, I don't know what went wrong, it's kind of like, well, that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. He's saying, are you kidding me?
If you knew, we wouldn't be having a problem.
And when he says nothing went wrong, you can totally tell he's covering, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have to get back. I know you do. That's my train. I have to go. Then take this with you. Oh, I wanted her to kiss him so badly. And it's a public place. She's Elizabeth Thatcher. The fact that she even kissed him on the cheek in that train station is big enough. But for me as a viewer, I'm like, no.
Well, especially it's the second cheek kiss of this 2-part episode.
Yeah.
After finally having the real kiss in the previous episode from season 1. They
have that behind them. Yes.
And you're just like, what?
You can feel the writers and the actors teasing us.
Right. What's interesting is as Elizabeth is going through all of this growth for her character, you can tell she's not ready for more right now. You can tell that this was so huge for her to kiss him.
To kiss him on the cheek.
And she thinks that is really telling him how she feels. Like, to her, that's huge. And that she's making this huge statement. And I think the problem is that it's not really.
It's not big enough.
Not really a big statement because it's not pushing through her comfort zone.
But you can tell, I think, in that tiny little moment, I think that you can tell that Jack recognizes what a big deal it is for her to be doing this in Hamilton, in public right now. So, because you can tell that he was not expecting that kind of show of affection. So good on her for doing it. Good on him for accepting it as a grand gesture. I just wanted more.
Yeah. And he did too.
Oh, of course he did.
But I don't, and while, yes, I think he wanted to kiss her. What I mean by that is he wanted her to recognize more of what's going on.
What the problem is. Yeah.
She has he can see that she's acting different here in Hamilton. He can see that she's having this internal struggle that I don't think she even knows she's having at this point.
Yeah.
And that's what's hurting him. That's what's bothering him, is that he can see there's this challenge and change since they kissed that he can tell she doesn't see yet.
Yeah.
That's what
thus we end. It's getting very heated and very tense. All right, Hearties, that is the first 2 episodes of season 2. We will be back with some more. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye, Hearties.